Hello and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, Lindsay White. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talent programs and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. The Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible female entrepreneurs to talk about their journey to creating their own business, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. And I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz. And during each episode, we'll be digging into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. And if you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and want some of my top tips to help you lead more effectively, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to highvoltageleadership.ca and click on the button at the top of the page that says Take the Quiz. Then you can share your results, connect with my guests, and join the conversation on Instagram by following me at highvoltleadership. Show, Leslie. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too, because we've had some great conversations, you and I.
Yep.
And I mean, I know a little bit about your journey to being a female founder, but I'm actually really excited to get into it a little bit more and to share that story today, because I know there's some powerful stuff in there. So, tell us about the backstory here. How did you start your own business?
So I come from 15 years in the news industry and was working in the corporate world, terrible schedules, lots and lots of stress. And over the last 18 months or so, I have really moved into a coaching type of lifestyle where, I myself really feel like I connect with my clients and wanted to do that more on a full-time basis. So I really started by launching my business about, I would say 13, 14 months ago. And then I left my news anchor job in September of this year to move into coaching full time. And so what I do is I help people with periods understand how to align with their cycle so that they can be happier. They can understand how to get more productivity and motivation out of life and really navigate a world that is set up for male hormones as someone who has a period. I do that through coaching, through courses, and through being what I call a permissionary, helping them understand that it is perfectly okay, valid, and amazing to be their radical, authentic self. And that is how I started my company, becoming my own authentic self and really understanding who I am as a person. As a news anchor, I really always said I played a news anchor on TV.
Yeah.
And so this position has allowed me to really blossom into who I really feel I am authentically. It feels great.
I love that, because I think you're right. I can imagine as a news anchor that you have, there's a persona there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So interesting. And I guess I'm making the assumption that there must have been some kind of evolution and maybe even a turning point where you realized this persona doesn't fit me anymore.
Absolutely. I think my big turning point was the pandemic, right? I saw myself being the essential anchor. I was the one that had to be at work, my co-anchor and my coworkers were allowed to work from home. And I suddenly started understanding that more and more and more was being asked of myself and the other women in the newsroom than the other coworkers. And that sort of started to rub me the wrong way. And throughout the pandemic, one thing that really came for me that was awesome is I did get more time to focus on the things I wanted to focus on outside of work. So I was able to explore my passions, but I also went through a major health situation. I came off of hormonal birth control during 2020 after 16 years, and it was wild. All hell broke loose. My hormones were crazy. My period did not come back for 8 or 9 months. My hair fell out. I got cystic acne. Yeah, as a news anchor, right? Hair falling out and cystic acne, not great. I had horrendous mood swings, and I was doing this during a time that was so stressful for the entire collective.
Yeah.
So as I worked to heal myself, that's really what led me to understand period coaches are needed and necessary, because I was out there doing this on my own.
Yeah.
right? My doctor was not very helpful. Bless. I mean, they had so much going on themselves. They couldn't hold my hand through figuring out my hormonal problems, not really. And so I spent hundreds of hours studying, thousands of dollars on courses, books, specialists, all manner of things to really finally understand that my purpose in life and my dharma has always really been to be a teacher and a mentor. And I
Mm.
felt like I did that as a news anchor. I really felt like I was there to teach people about the
Yeah.
world around them.
Yeah.
But in this new capacity as someone who's teaching people really to feel at home in their bodies, which is what I desperately needed myself, it's
Yeah.
allowed me to really step into what I feel is my purpose in a new way.
Yeah.
Um, and really get to shed the skin of that news anchor because 2020 was super stressful for everybody, right?
Oh, sure.
As the person on the news telling you, don't watch the news, it'll really stress you out. I'm still involved in the news. I have to
Yeah.
watch the news every day. And
Right.
I'm the one who has to be there working way more than I ever had before. And so my body was in full on fight or flight. I now realize
Yeah.
in 2021, as it kind of dragged on, I started to have very little passion for news. And I wanted to do this since I was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
So it just kind of petered out. And I started to discover I was suffering from major burnout. I was
Yeah.
sick for 3 months at the beginning of this year. I was eventually diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety. And so I think all of those 2, 3 years wrapped up into one is
Sure.
what became, yeah, was really the turning point to make me understand this isn't it anymore. And then this past summer in 2022, when I finally decided, okay, I need to leave. I actually had to take a mental health leave from work because my anxiety, my PTSD and depression was so elevated. I ended up kind of having panic attacks and I
Yeah.
just couldn't go back to work. It was after this horrendous school shooting in Texas and I was crying on the air and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I took a break and I guess that truly became the massive turning point for me career-wise because it was during that hiatus that I was able to one, feel very supported by the universe in ways I had never thought before, and
Yeah.
two, understand, okay, like my purpose as a news anchor has probably run its course, but I can continue to do what I have really loved doing over the past year, 2 years, and transition fully into this life as an entrepreneur.
I love it. I just thank you so much for sharing that, those intensely personal pieces of your journey, especially because they're very recent. Like this is
Hmm.
all transpired in the last 36 months. Like if you
Hmm.
think about that, that is not a very long time frame. And it sounds like, I mean, honestly, it was just one gut punch after another,
Yeah.
right? Like um, yes. And we all, it's amazing how little we have all acknowledged that like level of trauma that we all suffered through
Hmm.
during the pandemic is like, yes, we're trying to get on with it, all of
Hmm.
us. But actually, there's moments when we really have to acknowledge that we're still carrying that.
Yeah.
And then to have the physical symptoms, and I can only imagine, I remember back in the day I took Depo-Provera, the shot,
Hmm.
and I had a similar moment, when because I was on that for several years,
Yeah.
and it's like your body just goes into like a full-scale hormonal meltdown at that
Yeah.
point. So
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
can identify, it's been years for me, but I can identify with that. Like
Mhm.
that's heavy duty.
Yeah. Yeah. And doing all of that while also in the midst of the pandemic, while also working one of the most stressful jobs there
Oh,
is. So yeah,
100%.
and it's what's fascinating is, I did not know this at the time, but obviously now being a coach for menstrual cycles, stress is the biggest thing that impacts your cycle. So it was just one after the other after the other.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's interesting that ever since I have left the news industry, my period is great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a book, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the author's name, and it's the title is The Body Keeps the Score. And
Mm,
And I really believe that that is the truth, is that, and especially as women, because we've got the extra hormones, right? We're a little more sensitive. Our bodies, all of them, male, female, or whatever gender you identify with, our bodies really have a lot to tell us when it comes to what we're dealing with emotionally. And when we cannot find the language, when we cannot find the words to process it, often the body will give you pretty significant hints. And, it can only sustain so much stress, so much anxiety. So we're not built to be in fight, flight, or freeze for 36 months.
No.
We're built to be there so that we can escape being eaten by the saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, that all takes, that would take place within a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
You either got eaten or you got away. Those were kind of the options back, several millennia ago. Now we live in this society where, and through this pandemic, where we just have this overwhelming level of stress. Our bodies just can't sustain that. So, and then add on all of these other things. Like I can really empathize with that. And I think so many of the women that listen to this episode will really be able to connect to that in their own way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I also think what's fascinating, because I've read that book as well, is thinking about, I mean, I don't have numbers, hardcore numbers, but the amount of women specifically that most likely would have been experiencing burnout over the last 36 months. I mean, it's got to be sky high. And while I know men, and obviously talking in a gender binary, but are probably experiencing some as well. When you look, and we talked about this, in the pandemic too, at all the extra things, the people who are the child rearers and the home carers and the ones who have to work have to deal with, plus our extra hormones, plus how much stress impacts us, like our cortisol levels. Yeah, we have burnout at astronomically high rates, more so than anybody else.
I think, I don't know if all the research is in just yet. I mean, we're going to be dealing with the fallout from this pandemic for decades. There's look, it already defines us, because you either talk about it was before the pandemic or after the pandemic. And that's how we identify time now.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I do believe, and this is anecdotal for me too, but what I hear, especially from the female entrepreneurs and small business owners that I work with, is an extraordinary level of stress that was compounded by the second shift. So raising children or caring for, an elderly or ill relative, and still having to own, run, and look after people in their own business. And of course, the financial health of those organizations. And so I do see an inordinate level of that stress fallout that you clearly experienced, but have turned into something really beautiful. Like I love that you're taking everything that you've experienced and learned to support and help other women in their journey. That's remarkable.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like I can help because of the things that I've dealt with and the things that I've been through. I like to lead from a place of my own experience, and that's kind of how I've always been. But yeah, I feel like I needed somebody like myself when I was going through this. So of course it's up to me now to be that person for others.
100%. I think you just made a great point. I mean, one of the biggest attributes that we can use as a leader, and when I say leader, I don't just mean that lead people, like we lead ourselves first. I mean, that's the most important thing we can come to understand. But when we lead with vulnerability, when we lead with our heart, that's when we create incredible connection. That's when we, really seek to understand and listen to other people. And that's when we connect to the purpose and the why that others have. And then we can collaborate and grow and innovate. Like, to me, that's one of the most important things we can do in our leadership, whether we lead in a business or we lead in our community, or we lead in our family. So I love that you just really brought that out. That's amazing.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely not felt amazing all the time, but it feels pretty amazing overall.
Nobody promised it was going to be easy, right?
No.
So speaking of leadership, Leslie's already taken my leadership style quiz. We're going to talk about her style in a minute, But if you want to know what your leadership style is so that you can really in, this new year start to develop and grow as a really impactful, inspiring leader, you can take the quiz right now. It only takes a couple moments. There's a link in the show notes, or you can go to the website, highvoltageleadership.ca. There's a button at the top of the page that says take the quiz, and you can do it right now. So you can compare what your style is with Leslie. You can join the conversation over on Instagram. So tell us, what is your leadership style, Leslie?
So my leadership style, I would say, is a mix between the supporter and the coach.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you? Like, how does that show up in your life and your work?
Well, I think it's shown up my entire life for a lot of different reasons in a lot of different ways. I mean, even when I was working in the newsroom as a news anchor, feeling like I was somebody who was trying to lift others up while also help them succeed as I succeeded as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, now as someone who really is a coach, being able to be in collaboration with the people that I work with, much more so than me feeling like I'm directing them, or me feeling like, I'm the boss over them. My clients and I work together as a team, and I like to say we're explorers on the journey together.
I love that. I think that's so key. And such a great point about coaching is that it's a deeply connected relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as coaches, it's not about us. It's really about being that, you said explorer. I often use the word guide, but it's about walking with your client on their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so key.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people call themselves a coach. And what they are is a consultant or a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my framework, my 12-step program. I will teach you how to. That's cool too, but that's not actually coaching. And so I love that you brought that up, because I think that's what's the most powerful, is that collaborative approach, that co-creation, especially because for you as a period coach, it's their cycle.
Yeah.
It's not like, right? Like it has to be about them. So I love that. And certainly a supportive and coaching leadership style would be key to being successful in that space.
And I think what's interesting is it's something that I have seen myself evolving in, because right when I first started, after my certifications were done, you get in this mindset, and I'm sure other coaches, especially health coaches, are like this as well. You have all that mentality and that knowledge in your head, and you're like, okay, I have to teach this and this and this and this and this. And when I first started creating courses and creating group coaching programs, I myself would create frameworks, and then I would be like, damn, this shit does not work. Like it does work, but it's like it doesn't work all the same. And it's exactly what you say. I can't control someone else's menstrual cycle. I can't control what they're going to do, but being there with them as they navigate the twists and turns, like I said, as this explorer on this cyclical journey, for me is what has really become the foundation of the work that I do for myself.
Yeah.
And for clients as well. Because I think when you look at yourself, if you try to be this person, like an overlord, like preaching at yourself, I should do this. And we're about to be in 2023. I just did this reel about why New Year's resolutions are a scam. But like, if you're trying to preach on yourself the shoulds of all the things I should do, I don't think you're going to be successful. But even if you can guide yourself in this journey together on whatever topic you're trying to learn about, whatever it is, whatever goal you have, intention that you have, I think that even if you can just like nurture and support and guide yourself, it'll be much more successful than the, I just see like a outside disembodied voice, like shouting shoulds down at me. Cause I've been there. I've certainly done that myself. I mean, my 20s were riddled with just tons and tons and tons of self-limiting beliefs and, really taking it out on myself in a multitude of ways.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with my clients, I often use we call it the saboteur, right? Or Brene Brown calls it gremlins, or the itty bitty shitty committee, whatever you want to call it. that should conversation is coming from that saboteur space.
Yeah.
And what it is it drives us to behaviors that are not authentic, drives us to self-comparison, right? Where we start to think, how are we lining up with others?
Mhm.
And particularly in our journeys as women with our cycles, we
Mhm.
can't compare at all. No two women are alike. No two
No.
women are going to have the same, like, that is just the root of, all sorts of truly destructive behavior is the reality. And
Mhm.
you end up behaving and being in a place that you never intended,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it. Unwinding that is really tricky. It's
Mhm.
really tricky. So I love that. I love that idea of, really embracing that supportive coaching style for yourself and for your clients. That's so amazing. Awesome. Okay, so next question is all about, and you've already sort of talked about this a bit. Where have you, even recently in your business, where have you made mistakes or screwed it up?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I I like to say that my 2022 message from the universe was slow down. I see it now because
Love it.
obviously hindsight is 2020, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that is the theme that I'm taking into the rest of my life. Just slow the fuck down.
Love it.
So let's go back and I will show you some of the reasons why I needed to slow down. So I kickstart this business, LLC'd it, got everything situated in November of 2021. And then I get into 2022, I immediately hire a coach who I was not ready for, who
Mm,
I hired out of scarcity,
mm,
and who was immediately like, okay, let's scale. Like, you have a full-time job, you're not going to be able to coach people one-on-one so often, like scale, 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 create a group program. I'm like, okay, cool. I spend months creating this beautiful, and I'm very excited about this program. It will eventually see the light of day.
right.
But I created this program. I recorded like 15 to 20 hours of video and audio content, put all these things together. And let me tell you, like, it in its form, in its original form, it was just a fucking failure. It was too
Mm,
much, too soon, all the things. And what it made me do is really start to think of these concepts as, because I'm a baby coach, right? Like, I'm a newbie coach.
yeah.
It made me think of concepts that were really good and interesting, but things that were too advanced for me at the time. And so I say all this because, as someone who is just starting out in the coaching industry, but who had massive success as a news anchor, I have had to go back and tell myself, like, you can do this slowly. There is no rush. It took you years to make more than
Yes.
$20,000 in news, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't need to rush. And what's interesting is I see that same theme pop up with a lot of people who want to do this cyclical living journey. They start and they want to hit the ground running, they want to learn everything. They think that they have to just do everything in one menstrual cycle, right? 1 month.
Yeah.
And
No.
that's a lot of shit. Like, you're trying
Yeah.
to change the way you eat, the way you move, the way you self-care, process your trauma, get into your, it's just
Yeah.
way too much.
No.
And so that would be, I think, my biggest mistake, is just feeling like I needed to rush. And you kind of already mentioned this whole competitiveness,
Yeah.
comparisonitis
Comparative. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
that happens, with social media. And I think something that I've really had to work on with myself is uncovering how that is very much a patriarchal, stereotypical good girl
Yeah.
archetype that I have been living in for a lot of the years of my life.
Yeah.
And now checking out of it and saying consciously, when someone's like, you should do this, nope, I'm going to take it so slow. I'm going to be like the turtle. I'm like slower than the turtle. I'm like the flea on the turtle's back. Like, we're fucking chilling, and it'll come when it comes. Right. So slowing down has been my biggest lesson, because rushing is what almost really just screwed up the first part of my year in business. But also, rushing for me has just really gotten me nowhere good.
No.
Right. I mean, just think about it. You rush when you're cooking, you cut yourself. You
Right.
rush when you're, doing
Driving your
whatever, you
car, you get
have a
in
wreck,
a car
right? It's
accident.
just,
Yeah.
so for me, I think that rushing was where I saw the biggest failures. And so slowing down is what we're doing
Yeah.
now.
And can I just say, and I don't know who your coach was, and I'm not knocking them, but that to me is a really great example of someone who calls themselves a coach, but actually it was all about their agenda, not yours. Like they wanted you to scale.
Mhm.
They wanted you to grow. They were literally pulling you along that road,
Mhm.
not your road,
Right.
right? Like really powerful coaching gets right with you where you are
Mhm.
and helps you get deeply curious about what is happening right now.
Mhm. Yep.
And then helps you understand, who do I want to be?
Mhm.
How do I want to show up? What
Yep.
is the right next step? Actually, great coaching can often be very slow,
Mm.
which is the beauty of it, because you just spend time in that moment or in that space and just explore it and just get deeply curious about it and just reflect on it.
Mhm.
And then you move forward when the
Yeah.
time is right. So I think you presented such a beautiful example of a coach really driving the agenda that actually didn't belong to you.
Mhm.
Now,
Yep.
I'm sure your program is amazing because I know you well enough to know that you built something glorious that is going to help so many people, but it's going to happen when it's meant to happen.
Yep.
Not because some coach told you it needed to happen and that you should be again, that should word. If
Mhm.
you're listening to this episode and someone says to you, or your own brain is telling you you should be doing something, you need to stop immediately, get deeply curious about where that is coming from,
Yep.
and then I would argue potentially completely disregard it.
Yep. Yeah.
Because that
I
should
hate
word
should.
means
Yeah.
you are in dangerous territory.
Yep.
Dangerous territory. But I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because
Mhm.
going slow is sometimes the best way to go forward faster.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
I think we get so passionate about our businesses, whether we're selling services like you and I do
Mhm.
or product, we are so passionate about it. And the temptation is to just speed up. And
Yep.
that actually is the opposite of what we need to do more often than not.
Mhm. Yep. Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so going slow, that's your sort of mantra going in to a new
Yep.
year. What is that going to mean for you and your business?
I think for me, it's really just feeling into what feels good to do each day. I have built my business around my cycle. Obviously,
Oh,
that would
love
I
that.
I'm a cycle coach. You have to build a business around your cycle. So that looks like, if it's a day when I don't have a lot of energy, then I don't work on the business.
Amen.
Honestly, you just don't
Amen.
do it. It's like, for me, and I'm very blessed to have been able to save, like, have a good amount of
Yeah.
savings. Like, I'm not worried about, being able to make ends meet, but just feeling into when it feels really right. And I think for me, another really important thing I learned leaving a job that I was making six figures that I had built for 15 years, and then boom, I just mentally couldn't do it anymore, is every single day what I like to do is just pretty much open myself up to whatever abundance the universe wants to bring through me. I read this amazing book, my favorite book of 2022. It's called It's Not Your Money by Tosha Silver. And it has an abundance prayer in it. And part of the prayer says, let everything that needs to go, go, and let everything that needs to come, come.
Beautiful.
Yep. And so I feel like for me, in moving forward as this mantra of slow down, everything that will happen in its perfect timing, is, as someone who's lived in a very masculine frame of her own life, like my masculine energy has always been very high. That for me is what I'm going to focus on: opening up, being curious, having more fun,
Yeah.
and just letting it come naturally, because there are times in my cycle when shit comes so naturally that it's like I can't, it's like a super highway in my mind. I can't even keep track of all the amazingly epic ideas.
Right.
And then a couple weeks later, I'll be like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Nothing is coming through. And so honoring both of those things, I think, is so essential for myself moving forward. And I would also say, I think is essential for any female business owner who has a menstrual cycle to just understand, like, if there's days when shit doesn't feel right, just don't push it. Because
No.
that's when you're going to launch some shit that's awful, or like put something out on social media that isn't aligned. And yeah, so I think that's my other big
Yeah.
2023.
I love that message and I love that mantra because I think you're right. We just really need to be conscious of how our energy flows and yeah, in particular, how our cycle can impact that. Like I think we try and push through it.
Yep.
You know what? Pushing through and working harder and grinding it out just doesn't serve. It just
No.
doesn't. It doesn't. Now, it's not like every day is going to be paradise.
Right.
Like, let's be clear. Deadlines happen. Things shit's got to get shipped.
Yeah.
Whatever it is in your business. But, what are the priorities? And you better be right near the top of that list.
Yeah.
Your physical and mental health. And, some days getting up and having a shower, that goes in the win column. And that's okay. That is okay. It is okay to be easy on yourself.
Yeah.
You don't we spend too much of our lives beating ourselves up from the inside out and just kicking the shit out of ourselves.
Yeah.
So I really love this message that it is okay to go slow. It is okay to see your energy cycle like that. I think we all really need to pay attention to that.
I totally agree. And I also think kind of what you were saying, if you do find yourself where you have these deadlines and you have these to-dos, but it's a day when you don't feel the energy mentally or physically or emotionally to handle those things, I think it's a time to take a good look at that list and figure out if there's anything on the list that you thought you should put on it. Because a lot of
100%.
times, because there's like shit that I'll put on my to-do list because for the longest time, and this is such a type A personality, but I just got so much pleasure out of taking off those to-dos. Right. And that's such a masculine mentality. But now it's like, what do I really have to do today? Like I had to talk to you and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really have to do anything else. I had some errands I could run. And that's the other thing I tell my clients. If you find yourself in a should situation, change the word to could.
Yeah.
And see how that feels. Right.
Yeah.
I could run errands. I could not versus I should. I could go to the gym. I could eat a salad. I could eat a burger. I could eat some cookies. Could take a nap. So I feel like that's the other thing is, especially when it comes to the menstrual cycle and in the 2 weeks before your period, including your period, where our energy does wane.
Oh, 100%.
It's like that is the time to really just look at everything that you need to be doing and think, do I really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love all of that. And I need to be, I think I've gotten better as I've gotten older. I need to be even more conscious of that. So I love this conversation. The one other thing I would add, no is a complete sentence.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Not only do you need to pay attention to and manage your energy, you really, really need to learn how to say no, thank you. Or actually how to say no without using the 2 letters.
Right.
It's okay to decline. If it doesn't feel right, it should be a no. There's a should for you.
Yeah.
I love this. I could seriously talk about this all day because I think it's something that we all struggle with. Well, because we all have menstrual cycles. And so we all battle this. We all have since we were teenage girls. And the more we talk about it, the more we normalize this conversation. I think the better off every single one of us is. So thank you so much for speaking so boldly and sharing so vulnerably today here on the podcast. I'm super grateful to have had you as a guest today.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram at High Volt Leadership. We'll see you next Friday.